explosive confrontation erupted as Nigel Farage exposed Keir Starmer's never-seen human rights manual, Live on Air. The Reform UK leader systematically dismantled the Prime Minister's European law commitments using damning evidence from Starmer's own 1999 handbook. But then came the killer blow that changed everything. Farage revealed Starmer's passionate advocacy for making human rights the new way of thinking about law, directly contradicting government assurances. The devastating exposure left Labour's defender scrambling and viewers stunned.
First off, if you haven't jumped on board yet, hit that subscribe button and join this little family that's growing thanks to you.
A whole bundle of documents going back to the implementation of the Human Rights Act in 1998. And what is really interesting about these documents, as the ECHR is written into British law, as we debate what's going to happen, what it's going to mean, we were given some very strong reassurances. For example, Blair's Lord Chancellor at the time, Derry Irvine, said in the House of Lords in 1997, believe that Clause 2 gets it right in requiring domestic courts to take into account judgments of the European Court, but not making them binding. I think that binding certainly goes further than the convention itself requires. So, guys, it's all going to be OK. And the Home Secretary, Jack Straw, in 1998, at the moment this was passing through the House of Commons, said British judges will be enabled to make a distinctively British contribution to the development of jurisprudence of human rights across Europe. Namely, folks, it's all going to be great, we're in charge, we'll set the pace, and everybody else will follow us. And so it goes through. The Human Rights Act of 1998 goes through and becomes law. Yet, never seen before, a book published in 1999, as shown on this channel by our political editor Christopher Hope an hour or two ago, European Human Rights Law. You'll never guess who wrote it. Yes, it was our Prime Minister. There he is on your screens, a very young-looking Keir Starmer, and he was the one that wrote this book. He designed it to be a handbook, a guidebook for the implementation of human rights law into the British legal system. And he said this: above all else, the Human Rights Act represents a new way of thinking about law, politics, and the relationship between public authorities and individuals. Its potential is enormous. Its effectiveness depends on the combined willingness of us all to approach decision-making from a human rights perspective. So there you are. There was the Prime Minister, despite the assurances we've been given by Home Secretaries, by Lord Chancellors, just a year after its implementation, saying, actually, do you know what? The entire legal system should be based on these texts. And indeed, as it says, European. And that's the key. European human rights law. Now, I used to say, and I confess I've had this wrong, I used to say the Prime Minister didn't believe in anything. But he did, because here he was in July 2024 on the same theme he was talking about in this book in 1999.
I myself first read about the principles of the Convention and international law in a law library in Leeds, 40 years ago now. And that inspired me in everything that I have done since. And I draw strength from it and value from it every day.
So the debate back then was about a maximalist or minimalist approach. We were assured it would be minimalist. Keir Starmer was determined that it would be maximalist, and it has been for the last quarter of a century. We know who the real Keir Starmer is. I'm joined in the studio by the aforementioned Christopher Hope, GB News political editor, by Farage, human rights lawyer, friend of the programme, and Martin Howe, KC barrister. Martin, I've got to start with you because we're having quite a legal argument here with you guys. Do you think Derry Irvine and Jack Straw were telling us the truth in 97, 98?
They were naive in believing that by writing a statute saying that you must take into account Strasbourg judgments that it would not lead to our courts really slavishly following them. And that was really confirmed by a judgment a few years later in a case called Allah by Lord Bingham, who said that in approaching Strasbourg court judgments, our courts must, in effect, follow them, do no more, certainly do no less than Strasbourg.
And Fadi, I mean, you're in general a supporter of these concepts, but we were given assurances that this would not affect effectively our judicial sovereignty, but it has in almost every way, hasn't it?
It has. It certainly is, as Keir Starmer said, a new way of thinking about law and politics. But I would argue that overall, it's empowered many segments of society. Look at the system beforehand. Often we talk about the common law, and we always, before this entire framework came in, we had the common law. What was wrong with the common law?
Centuries.
Okay, but here's the key difference, I think, between the common law and the ECHR. The common law, its biggest boast was that you are free to do whatever you want unless it's prohibited specifically by law.
Yep.
So unless it's illegal, you can do it,
Yep.
which itself was a revolutionary way of thinking, because other systems around the world had it the opposite way around. You could only do what the law permitted you to do. But those aren't real rights or freedoms, because the common law was residual in nature. It's the leftover after law. It means that the law can take it away at any point. What the ECHR did was that it put a barrier, it created specific rights, such that when law is being made, it had to be balanced against those rights.
Well, all well and good, but it led to people not being deported because their kid likes chicken nuggets. It led to sex offenders not being sent back to other countries because they might face a tough time when they get there.
But I would argue those were wrong decisions. Those were an incorrect approach, not
British
the
judges,
framework.
by British
Yes.
judges.
So getting the wrong vision doesn't mean the framework faulty.
No, I would disagree with that, because in fact, the convention itself, the text of the convention, if you read it, it has a perfectly reasonable set of rights that 90% of people across the whole political spectrum would agree with. The problem we've had is 70 years of judgments by the Human Rights Court at Strasbourg, who are basically a self-selecting bunch of human rights zealots who do not respect the boundaries of their own judicial role. They behave as political activists making law, not as judges actually interpreting the text that has been laid down to them.
Well, Chris Hope, you can get some other political opinion from the Labour Party to begin with.
Yes, we are. We're looking to speak to Labour MP very soon. I'm not sure they're there just yet.
I believe so.
We're looking to speak to David Pinto Duchinzi. There we are. Mr. Duchinzi, thank you for joining us tonight on Farage. The key question presented by this 900-page manual on the Human Rights Act is, given the investment the PM had in human rights law, does he have the courage to reform it?
Well, look, obviously I've not seen the book you've just talked about. I'm unfortunately not a prominent legal scholar. I think my parents probably wish I was. But I think the Prime Minister's determination to stop the boats and to deal with the problem that we were bequeathed by the last Conservative government is absolute. And on the ECHR and on these issues, we've seen that we are going to be legislating to restrict the application of Article 8. We've already paused the right to family reunion, and we are talking to countries across Europe about how it can be changed. And so I think we have a Prime Minister and a government that is absolutely focused on dealing with this problem.
Why should we believe it will happen, given his support for human rights legislation and therefore the European Convention on Human Rights? I mean, will he actually go ahead and tweak Article 8, and how quickly can that be done? We saw those battles, didn't we, with the Tory government over prisoner votes back in the day, and that was also a Strasbourg issue.
Well, look, we have, made it very clear that we're going to legislate on this. We have a Home Secretary who has already talked about, even though she's been in post only 3 days, that she doesn't agree with a maximalist approach. And we have a government that is taking really concrete steps. I think the other thing we've got to do here in this debate is step back This is a really serious problem, and it requires serious solutions and practical solutions. And that's exactly what we're seeing from this government. So, for instance, we've just in the last few weeks announced a returns treaty with France, and we are already detaining people. People will start being returned in the coming weeks. We've signed a deal with Iraq to cut that problem off at source. We're bringing legislation through Parliament to bring in anti-terrorist style powers. We need to crack down on people, and we're bringing in sanctioning to deal with these people smugglers. Again, real action to tackle these issues at root cause. And the other thing we're doing is doubling the level of asylum decision making. Now, sorry, excuse me. Now, I think that stands in stark contrast with the approach taken by other parties. We've seen gimmicks from the Conservatives culminating with the Rwanda scheme, which cost us 700 million and returned just 4 volunteers. By contrast, this government has already saved £1 billion on hotels and sent back over 35,000 people. I think it's a really clear contrast, and I'm afraid there's a clear contrast too with reform. Their plans simply don't add up.
There's one final question, David Pinto Duchinski. I hope you can hear the question with your earpiece there. There's one problem here, isn't it? And it's in the shape of Lord Hermer. He's the Attorney General. Will he actually allow reform of the UK's approach towards human rights laws, or will he object and obstruct these changes?
Absolutely not. Look, we are clear that we are bringing in legislation to deal with Article 8. We have already paused family reunion. And so, again, I keep coming back to this is practical solutions for the problem that's making an actual difference. And the contrast with, say, reforms plans, which unravel within 24 hours. Firstly, Mr. Farage